Hello, let us continue our reading of the poem The Prologue by Bradstreet. As we can find that this particular poem, The Prologue by Bradstreet, it will be divided into 8 major stanzas, and each stanza consists of 6 lines. So far as the technical or maybe the structural perspectives are concerned, you will find that this particular poem was written in iambic pentameter. It was the prevalent meter which was used by the eminent authors of this particular time period. And also you will find that this particular poem, in each stanza, the rhyme scheme was AB, AB, CC. That means kings and things, it is rhyming. Begun and run, it is rhyming. And also fourth and worth, these were rhyming. So AB, AB, CC. This was the format. Let us continue our reading of this poem. The poem begins in this fashion. To sing of wars, of captains and of kings, of cities founded, commonwealths begun, for my mean pen are 2 superior things. I have already mentioned that what should be the indication that Bradstreet is positing through this particular poem. Is it a kind of an ironic shaft that she is using that is actually indicating the way the patriarchy is treating the female authors of that in the time period? Or it is a kind of self-depreciation that Bradstreet is showing or focusing, that the female authors of the time period, they couldn't have such talent like the male authors. She says, to sing of wars of captains and of kings, of cities founded. If you think of the time period, it is the mid-17th century. Wars, captains, kings, cities founded, commonwealths begun, all these are very eminent, the subjects to be written on. You know that so far as the literary perspectives are concerned, we find that the most important characteristic, the most important genre of writing, it was considered in the ancient period as epic poetry. And whenever you will deal with the epic writing, you will find that they are the classics. And they were dealing with wars, captains, kings, cities founded and cities lost, and also indicating towards commonwealth of man. So fundamentally, whenever you are treating literature, if I consider a kind of, say, hierarchization regarding literature and literary piece, you will find that the most important part of writing, whether these have to be classified in terms of Shakespearean writing, you will find like Hamlet, Macbeth, Othello, King Lear, these were the verse dramas. If you think of the epic poetry written by Homer and other writers like Ovid and you see the Virgil, you will find that there are the references of wars, there are the references of the captains, there are the references of the kings, there are the references of founding of the cities. Everywhere you will find that these are set, these are considered to be important ingredient for writing great poems. And Bradstreet began this particular poem by referring to that. She says, to sing of wars. Now, what is singing? You will find that in the ancient form, in the mythological form, always it has been considered that there are 9 muses. Okay? The reference to the muse will be there, or here also in this particular poem. The 9 muses who took birth from Zeus and Mnemosyne. They are the 9 daughters. And in the classical antiquity, in the classical construct, it has been conceptualized that they are considered as the goddesses of the fine arts. Okay? To each of these 9 muses, a branch of the fine art has been vested. And it has been considered in the ancient classical period that without the intervention of these muses, no person can show any talent in any part of the fine arts. whether it is dancing, whether it is music, whether it is writing poetry or in any other form, that is, and painting and so on. So ultimately, here it has been indicated that scenes of war, this is actually being posited, this is actually being incorporated as writing poetry. So read, sing as writing poetry. So when Bradstreet is writing to sing of wars, of captains and of kings, of cities founded, commonwealths begun, for my mean pain. See the irony that is being indicated. Today we can identify, today we can see that the pain could not be mean. But again, the question is there. Is it a kind of a humility that Bradstreet is showing? Is it a kind of a self-depreciation that Bradstreet is opening here? This is a question. Or rather, it is not simply a kind of humility. Rather, it is a kind of an ironic interpretation, ironic orientation, that she is considering my pain to be quote-unquote mean. Why? Because it has been made mean by the patriarchal figures. Okay? Who are actually thinking, who are actually positing this particular question, that the females cannot write. The female could use needle better than a pen. So that is being indicated here. She says, for my mean pen are two superior things. That means I cannot write anything about them. I cannot write an epic poem. I cannot write anything, in this particular form of grandiostic representations. It is not possible for me. Or how they all, or each their dates have run. Let poets and historians set forth, or set these forth. My obscure lines shall not so deem their worth. That means, if I try to write any particular poem in this particular fashion, then probably these will not be considered to be great poems at all. Let poets and historians, okay, so these are the focus for them. Let Herodotus come, you see. Let the eminent Shakespeares come. Let the males come, not the females, because it is out of the reach of the females in a typical patriarchal setup. So you can think that she is self-depreciating, or you can think rather that ironically she is indicating how the females have been treated in a society, in a typical patriarchal society. Both orientations can be applicable here, because you see that when Bradstreet is writing the typical pro forma of writing Latin poetry, there such kind of humility is the basic trend. Showing humility is a basic trend when you are ascribing to the ancient works by ancient authors. You are ascribing to the ancient writers like, you see, Bertus, whose name will be there here also. And here she writes, to sing of wars, of captains and of kings, of cities founded, commonwealths begun, for my mean pen are two superior things. Or how they all, or each their dates have run. Let poets and historians set these forth. Let them write. Let them write of their exploits, heroic exploits. Let them write of their movements and achievements. It is not for me. It is not my cup of tea. My obscure lines shall not so deem their worth, because if I write, then it will be, their words will be made dim by me. I don't want that. She further continues, but when my wandering eyes and envious heart. So these two terms are actually focusing on the typical feminine consciousness of this time. That wandering eyes and envious heart. Wandering on what? Great Bertus' sugared lines. Who is Bertus? His name is Guillaume de Bertus. He was a French Protestant poet. You will find, as I mentioned in my previous lecture, that whenever we read Anne Bradstreet's writing, Towards the first half of Anne Bradstreet's writing, we find that she was very much influenced by these authors, whether the French Protestant poet like Bertus, or maybe the other poets who are eminent, the eminent dignitarians in the typical English framework. But towards the later part of her life, of her academic life, we find that she actually excelled in each and every perspective. She cannot be considered to be an influenced author. Rather, everywhere we could find that her talent actually moved her towards the opening sections, obviously. She writes, but when my wandering eyes, so the two terms that she is using here, the first one is wandering and the second one is envious. Okay, the matter of wonder is always being associated with such kind of humility as I have mentioned just now. But why envious? When she writes envious heart, so when you are envying others, then probably it is not the matter of humility that you are writing. Rather, you will say that I want to be like him, right? So you actually nourish, you actually inculcate a kind of secret desire within you. And that is being indicated here. Okay, so is it simply indicating that I don't have such talent? Or rather, it is indicating that I don't have such kind of chances. These are the matters that's being indicated, not overtly mentioned, rather hinted. And we have to identify the lines in between lines. Here she writes, but when my wandering eyes and envious heart, great Bertus's sugared lines, it's sugared lines, obviously this is indicating the sweet lines as we know, do but read over. Fool, I do grudge the Muses did not part, betwixt him and me that overflowing store. So ultimately, I can identify, I can consider myself fool. You will find the similar word being used by Philip Sidney at the opening or the last lines of his opening sonnet in Astrophil and Stella. There also the term fool is being indicated when you are thinking something and when you are thinking that, considering that what I have thought, it is a fool kind of, a complete kind of a wrong or ignorance is working within me. She writes here, fool, I do grudge. Now the grudge against what? I do grudge the Muses did not part betwixt him and me, that overfluent store. So there is a kind of a difference that she is indicating. Literally, it is indicating that Bertus have such talents and I do not have that. And there is a particular kind of an overflowing store in between. So betwixt means between Bertus and me, there is a huge difference that she is indicating here. But ultimately, again, we, the readers, will think in this 21st century, is the difference is indicating towards the knowledge and wisdom, or rather the matter of chances, or it is a kind of a gender difference that have been posited by patriarchy. That is the fundamental question that we should ask. But when my wandering eyes and envious heart, great Bertus's sugared lines do but read over. Fool, I do grudge the Muses did not part betwixt him and me that overflowing store. And then I can identify myself, then I can say to myself, a Bertus can do what Bertus will. So Bertus is a different kind of, orientation is being given. Bertus is not simply a figure. Bertus is not simply a poet. Bertus is representing patriarchy. And she writes, therefore, a Bertus can do what a Bertus will, but simple I according to my skill. Okay? That means, though it is possible, though it is true that I do not have such kind of skill like Bertus, but ultimately I have some. You see, the simplicity is being present within me. The temperament, the orientation, the knowledge, the way of writing, these are starkly different from one person to another. The idiolects differ. The sociolects differ. But ultimately, I have to accomplish, I have to say that but simple I according to my skill. That means I do not have the skill like Burtis. But I cannot negate that I have small amount of skill too. That particular skill has not to be negated by patriarchy for any betterment. Okay? How this continues, we will read in our next lecture. Stay attached.